Imagine, it's easy if you try. This was John Lennon's stomping ground when he was a young student at the Liverpool College of Art. But imagine further back in time, to the mid-18th century. Liverpool was growing in importance, a fast-growing port where its merchants and ship owners were investing their newfound wealth in property. This was the countryside, on the edge of the Toxteth Deer Park. It was green fields which was soon to become the site of the most impressive and exclusive homes in the city. Considered by many observers to be the most impressive detached Georgian mansion remaining in the city, this is Blackburn House. It's named after the man who commissioned it. John Blackburn was a shipowner, one of many involved in the notorious slave trade that operated from the River Mersey in the 17th and 18th centuries. In 1760, when Blackburn selected this site for the construction of his imposing new home, the property stood on a ridge, enjoying commanding views over the city, to the river and beyond. Blackburn died in 1786, and his son, another John Blackburn, served as MP for Lancashire for more than 40 years. In 1844, the property was acquired by cotton broker George Holt, a noted slavery abolitionist, who was also a supporter of women's rights. Under Holt's supervision, the building became Blackburn House Girls' School, the first of its kind in the city. Soon after his death in 1861, it was taken over by the nearby Mechanics' Institute, and by 1876 the building had been remodelled, including the central tower with its distinctive cloister vaulted roof. It was reopened as the Liverpool Institute High School for Girls alongside the nearby Liverpool Institute High School for Boys. In 1905, the school came under the management of Liverpool Corporation and remained under local authority control until its closure in 1986. Following the closure, the building lay unused until in 1994, and with investment of more than £4 million, it reopened as the Women's Technology and Education Centre. Today, it continues to provide education and training. It also boasts a thriving cafe, a women's health suite, extensive conference facilities, and a 30-place nursery. In the same year that Holt was buying Blackburn House, proposals were first made for the building of a permanent concert hall to house the Liverpool Philharmonic Society. Hope Street is now the heart of Liverpool's cultural quarter, and the jewel in its crown is surely the Liverpool Philharmonic Hall. The Liverpool Philharmonic Society was founded in 1840, but did not have a home of its own at that time. 4 years later, local architect John Cunningham was asked to draw up plans for a new concert hall to house the Phil. The result was a design that catered for audiences of 2,100 people and hosted orchestras with as many as 250 members. It took 3 years to build and was opened on the 27th of August 1849. The construction cost was around £30,000, the equivalent of some £2.8 million at today's prices. It saw performances by some of the greatest musicians of the era, and in 1930 a new organ was installed at a cost of £2,000. However, within 3 years disaster struck, when on the evening of the 5th of July 1933 a fire broke out in the roof space. More than 100 firemen fought the blaze, but the hall and its new organ were damaged beyond repair. Demolition work began immediately, and an insurance policy financed the cost of building a replacement on the same site. This is the magnificent Art Deco construction that we see today. It was designed by another local architect, Herbert J. Rouse, in which is more correctly described as the streamlined modern style. It is faced in distinctive fawn-coloured bricks and stands 3 stories high with a symmetrical front elevation, featuring a canopied entrance flanked by semicircular stair turrets. In the entrance to the hall is a copper memorial to musicians who died with the sinking of the Titanic. On the landings there are gilded reliefs of Apollo by artist Edmund C. Thompson. The curved auditorium has superb acoustics, and its side walls carrying female figures in the Art Deco style, representing musical moods, also by Thompson. In recent decades, the hall has seen ambitious renovation and extension projects, which have included the addition of conferencing rooms and more extensive catering facilities. As the home of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, the hall stages around 250 events each year, of which more than 60 are classical music concerts. Other shows include music of various types, along with films projected onto the famous wall-to-door rising cinema screen. Tours of the hall are also arranged, and it can be hired for corporate or private events, including weddings. The fortunes of this area have been transformed in recent years. 30 years ago, the kebab house was the main reason to visit Hardman Street. Now the whole place has a bohemian atmosphere, with scores of bars and restaurants doing a roaring trade. But the future of a Rodney Street landmark has only recently been secured. Some people thought St Andrew's Church was actually cursed. Perhaps some still do. Built by the Church of Scotland, it was opened in 1824 and closed 150 years later in 1974. It fell into the hands of a property speculator and was on the Heritage at Risk register. The facade, designed by Liverpool Corporation surveyor John Foster, is now the only part that now remains largely intact. Eventually, it was converted into apartments, and the former oratory has planning permission for a restaurant or bar. Untouched in the graveyard is the distinctive pyramid-shaped tomb of William Mackenzie, a railway contractor who died in 1851. Legend has it that Mackenzie was a gambling man who sold his soul to the devil. They say his remains were interred in a seated position, so the devil could claim him. His spirit is said to haunt Rodney Street, and hence the story that the building itself was cursed. If Mackenzie had lived a little longer, one of his real haunts might have been the Roscoe Head pub, which opened in 1870. It's one of a handful of traditional hostelries that remain intact in the city. Its range of real ales and intimate atmosphere has made it a long-standing favourite with members of the Campaign for Real Ale. The pub is named after William Roscoe, the Liverpool historian, poet and campaigner for the abolition of slavery. Universally known in Liverpool as the bombed-out church, the magnificent tower and walls of St Luke's stand as a war memorial. It was an Anglican parish church that was destroyed by incendiary bombs during the May Blitz of 1941. The site had been donated by Lord Derby in 1791 on condition that the land should never be used for any other purpose than that of a religious worship. The church, with its ornate Gothic windows and pinnacles, was constructed in ashlar sandstone between 1811 and 1832 to a design by John Foster, Sr., completed by his son John Foster Jr. They were a father and son who served as successive surveyors for the Corporation of Liverpool. John Foster Jr., you may recall, was the man who also designed St Andrew's in Rodney Street. The tower was home to the first ever metal bell frame in the world, and it remains in position to this day, though the bells were removed after the fire. In addition to being a parish church, St Luke's was also intended to be used as a venue for ceremonial worship by members of Liverpool Corporation. It was on the 6th of May 1941 that the incendiary bombs fell and started the blaze that gutted the entire building. During the remainder of the war, it was left boarded up, and afterwards it was decided that the shell should be left standing as a memorial to those who perished in the bombings. For decades, it had been blackened by the deposits of soot from coal fires, but in the 1980s it was cleaned to reveal the true beauty of the warm yellow sandstone. The church and the surrounding walls, gates and railings are recorded in the National Heritage List for England as designated Grade 2 listed buildings and have been undergoing a process of restoration to ensure their future is secure. Come back in part 2 to see our next venue, another disused church, but this time it's not a memorial to the dead, but a memorial to the pleasures of the flesh, enough to make its founders, the members of a Royal Catholic Order of Monks, spin in their graves. Top marks for those who predicted our next port of call. The former Liverpool Mission Church of St Peter in Seal Street, another Grade 2 listed building. It dates from 1788 when it was built under the supervision of Benedictine priest Father Archibald MacDonald. At that time, the area was mostly rural, with a scattering of cottages, and the church was built outside the city proper, so as to avoid the risk of stirring anti-Roman Catholic sentiments. The church continued to operate under the care of the Benedictine order until 1976, after which time it was taken over to serve the Polish community. Until its closure in the early 90s, St Peter's has been the most ancient Catholic church in the city, and its crypt was the last resting place for dozens of clergy. It was deconsecrated in 1993 and originally intended for conversion into office space. When it later emerged that it was to be converted into a bar and restaurant, there were protests from some members of the Catholic Church, incensed that religious artefacts like altar rails, crucifixes and religious paintings had been left in place. The remains of monks were removed from the crypt and reinterred elsewhere before the building was converted into the Alma de Cuba. Since it opened in 2005, the venue has proved to be popular with a wide range of clients, not least because of its unique and distinctive interior decor. This whole area was once a hive of activity connected with the port. Bold Street, Fleet Street and Seal Street grew rapidly in the late 18th and early 19th centuries and were originally the home to rope works, supplying Mersey shipping. Rope making required long buildings in which the product was laid out on the ground. This is why the streets area are long and straight, although the rope works have long since disappeared. The Epstein Theatre in Hanover Street has had a checkered history. It was originally opened in 1913 as Crane's Music Hall, created on the top floor of the Crane's Brothers music store. In the interwar period, amateur drama groups staged productions there, and it was renamed the Crane Theatre in 1938. But in 1966, after Crane said they would close the theatre, it was bought by Liverpool Corporation and renamed the Neptune Theatre. However, the Neptune never quite achieved the success it had promised, and with a drop in the number of Amdram groups along with the development of other venues, the City Council was again considering closure in 1993. This caused a huge outcry, and many performers, including Dame Judi Dench, joined the campaign to keep it open. A professional pantomime, Snow White, was staged for the first time, proved to be a massive success, and helped keep the place going. In 1997, the Neptune was renamed in memory of the Beatles manager Brian Epstein. And as the Epstein Theatre, it found a new lease of life as a venue for stand-up comedy and touring productions. Busy Hanover Street was renamed in honour of the House of Hanover, after King George I was crowned in 1714. It had previously been named King Street. Great Charlotte Street is named after Queen Charlotte, the wife of his son George II. This was Blacklers, a famous Liverpool-based department store. You could get almost anything in Blacklers, from furniture to fashions, and its haberdashery department was known to carry a vast range of stock. But the store was perhaps most famous for its lavish Christmas grotto and its rocking horse Blackie, which is now on display in the Museum of Liverpool. At its interwar peak, the store employed 1,000 people, working across 6 floors and a warehouse in Bootle. Beatles legend George Harrison worked as an apprentice electrician at Blacklers in 1959, and Pete Best's mother Mona bought his drum kit from the Blacklers music department. The store was founded by Richard John Blackler and A.B. Wallace in the early 20th century. Mr. Blackler died in 1919, but his partner Mr. Wallace carried on the concern, supported by Margaret Blackler. Despite the building being badly damaged in the 1941 May Blitz, the business survived thanks to temporary outlets established in Bold Street and Church Street, and the first part of the completely rebuilt store was opened on the 29th of March 1953. Margaret Blackler died in 1957 without children, and ownership was passed to a number of shareholders, including sportswoman Vera Kingston, who was Margaret's goddaughter. In 1983, following Vera's death, the store was sold on once again, and all links to the original owners disappeared. It remained open only until April 1988, when it closed its doors. The site now includes a Wetherspoons named the Richard John Blackler and a branch of Lloyd's Bank. Part of the upper floors have been converted into a stylish party venue named the Blackler's Room, which is hired out for weddings and other private functions. This area of the city is undergoing redevelopment, and within a year will become home to a combined development of apartments, restaurants and eateries. Despite a long campaign to save the Scala Cinema, it was defeated and the site has now been cleared for new buildings. One of Lime Street's timeless classics is the Britannia Adelphi Hotel. The present building is the 3rd hotel on the site and is Grade 2 listed. It holds 402 bedrooms, conference and dining facilities, bars and a gymnasium. The first hotel on the site opened in 1826 when James Radley converted 2 18th century townhouses. That hotel was replaced by another hotel in 1876, which was bought in 1892, renamed the Midland Adelphi by its owners, the LMS Railway. In 1914, it was replaced by the current building. Constructed in Portland stone and designed by Frank Atkinson, it was once described as the most luxurious hotel. The original purpose of this building is fast becoming lost of local memory. Now known as Grand Central, it was built as a place of worship in 1905 as the Methodist Central Hall. It has a capacity of 3,576 people and was also used until 1944 as the New Century Picture Hall Cinema. From 1933 to 1939, the hall was the home of the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, while the Philharmonic Hall was rebuilt following a fire. In 1990, the Methodist Church sold the building and it reopened as a bar and nightclub. It is Grade 2 listed and is now used for accommodation for alternative shops. Our final destination in this edition is Chinatown, which is recognised as the oldest of its kind in Europe. The presence of Chinese people in the city dates back to 1834, when the first vessel arrived direct from China at Liverpool's docks to trade goods such as silk. Strong links were established between the cities of Shanghai, Hong Kong and Liverpool, and many Chinese nationals settled in the city. The original Chinatown was in the docks and featured businesses that included restaurants, laundries and chemist shops. When these were destroyed during World War II, Chinatown was relocated to its current site in Nelson Street. The entrance is marked by a Chinese arch constructed in the year 2000 by a team of builders and artists from Liverpool's twin city of Shanghai. Tune in to the next edition of Streets of Liverpool, where we take a look outside the centre to explore some of the city's hidden gems and important historic sites.